Well, let's go now to our focus report. Syrian refugees are the most badly affected by President Trump's contentious travel ban. In his January 27th decree, the US leader refused access to refugees and citizens of 7 Muslim-majority nations, including Syria. But while the 6 other nations were targeted with a 3-month block and all refugees were to see their admission process suspended for 4 months, Syrian refugees were the only ones subjected to an indefinite ban. In Lebanon, several hundreds of them had been due to leave for the United States, but the long process of resettlement, managed by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, is now partly blocked. Now, in the midst of a fierce legal battle around the ban, the situation has become extremely unclear. Our correspondent went to meet some of the men and women whose American dream is under threat by the Trump administration.
2 weeks ago, Abu Ahmed was ready to fly to America, far from his home country, Syria, which is less than 10 kilometers away from this valley, just behind these mountains. Living in Lebanon as a refugee for 5 years, he has but one room, which he shares with his wife and 4 children. Abu Ahmed's fate now depends on the judicial saga of Trump's travel ban. He and his family had only a medical examination remaining before their big departure.
Our lives came to a full stop. We had all the formalities nearly cleared, and things just ended like that. How do you want me to feel? The most important thing was to go abroad for this child so he could be treated as soon as possible.
Both he and his son have developed Mediterranean fever, a genetic disease that prevents Abu Ahmed from working. Now, he feels totally helpless, especially since he would have preferred to leave for the United Kingdom, where he already has family.
We didn't choose to go to the US. We didn't wait outside the embassy door asking for asylum. The HCR process clearly says we have no right to choose the country of destination. They chose us.
In the neighboring camp, Trump's decree feels like another humiliation.
Good morning. How are you guys?
The overwhelming majority of refugees here are undocumented, but all dream of leaving Lebanon.
He's an animal and a racist, that Trump. What he wants are tall blondes with blue eyes. I wonder how we're going to find people like that here.
The image of the United States, which still retains its attraction, has nonetheless taken a hit.
It's a racist and fundamentally unfair decision. It's the country that symbolizes liberty and democracy, but this decision has undermined everything. Both their values of democracy and freedom. The image of the country will change. I expect that all the countries of the world, or rather all the peoples of the world, will get a very bad image of them.
Trump's executive order has literally put the lives of some of the most vulnerable at risk. The family of Naima, a transgender refugee, has threatened to kill her if she doesn't return immediately to her hometown, which is controlled by the Islamic State organization. She now has a lawyer from the American NGO IRAP, who assist refugees. Naima explains that for her, the danger is not just from her family, but that without papers, she was arrested and tortured twice by Lebanese police. She's also been the victim of homophobic attacks.
Once I was stabbed in the street. I was with a friend who has been able to leave the country since then, thanks to the American NGO. They hit both of us, and I got a stab wound. Of course I'm threatened.
In recent months, the threats from her family have multiplied. Now, Naima barely dares to leave her flat, and in this context, the Trump decree has only further traumatized her.
It's really crushed my morale. Since then, I've had a lot of problems and I sleep very little. What can I do? It no longer depends on me. I'm threatened with death and I have to hide. I cannot do anything else but wait. Maybe I should commit suicide.
Naima's case is being followed by Charlotte, a French lawyer. She explains that resettled refugees are the most vetted migrants in the world. A myriad of US agencies, including the FBI and the Defense Ministry, examine their cases.
Syrian refugees are not a danger to the United States. If a terrorist wanted to reach the US territory, he would certainly not choose the resettlement route. The security considerations evoked by President Trump are completely unrealistic and unfounded, neither in law nor in fact.
Of the international NGOs, the Norwegian Refugee Council has been amongst the most critical of the Trump decree. Their advocate regrets the direction taken by the new US administration.
Certainly a game changer for the US. The idea that the doors are now closing, whether those refugees are from Syria or from elsewhere, is very disappointing and very sad to see from a country that has been so incredibly welcoming to people who are fleeing war, fleeing famine, and looking for a safe place to take their families and their children.
Last year, the United States welcomed almost 2/3 of all refugees resettled by the UNHCR worldwide. Among them, more than 12,000 Syrians. In 2017, though, the Trump administration seems to be slamming the door in their face.
Well, staying with the impact of the migrant crisis, this time here in Europe, French prosecutors have reached a verdict in a case that has polarised opinion. Franco-Italian farmer Cédric Héroux was on trial for helping some 200 migrants cross into France and giving them shelter. Under anti-human trafficking laws, he faced up to 5 years behind bars and a fine of up to €30,000. But rights groups supported the farmer, saying individuals should not be prosecuted for what they call crimes of solidarity. While Héroux has now been sentenced to a suspended fine of €3,000, Alexander Alcott explains.
The verdict is in a trial that sparked widespread debate on the treatment of migrants in France. The Franco-Italian farmer who helped some 200 migrants cross from the Italian border has received a suspended €3,000 fine. As well as helping the illegal immigrants enter the country, Cédric Héroux also helped them with transport and shelter. He was accused of illegally taking over an unused public building to house 57 of them. The prosecution had requested an 8-month suspended sentence. Throughout the trial, he insisted he did the right thing.
I found myself on the wrong side of the law because the authorities forced me to break the law in order to protect these families and children who I helped to cross. And I'll do it again if I have to.
Cédric Héroux raises livestock in the Roya Valley, a mountainous area between Italy and France. Hundreds of migrants have crossed here to try to make it to northern Europe. The farmer has been helping families since March last year, mostly from Sudan and Eritrea. He offered them food and shelter in these caravans and tents, until one day the police came to raid his makeshift refugee camp.
The police came here armed with pistols in their hands. They went into the caravan and took the kids away and drove them back to Italy and left the children's possessions inside. And they climbed back up the next morning because we're not far from the Italian border. So they came back up on foot and they were taken in by the state 4 days later. So what was it all for? We don't know.
Cédric says he must keep on doing what he's been doing until the authorities face up to their responsibilities.
Well, going back to our story on how Syrian refugees are bearing the brunt of the Trump ban on travel and refugees. Let's cross now to our guest. Joël Bassoul is a media advisor for Oxfam's Syria response. Hello, thank you very much for being with us on France 24. Can't NGOs act for these refugees and get them to the United States while the legal process unfolds?
The legal process is a long one. The battle is not won yet. President Trump has to stop his cynical move to perpetuate prejudice and exploit fears. And to that effect, Oxfam is a plaintiff in a legal case in Massachusetts, where it is based in the United States. Now, what is happening in Lebanon is that since the courts got involved in the executive order, there was a bit of chaos at the beginning. Refugees who were leaving Lebanon to go to the U.S. were stranded at the airport. What we have to know is that there are no direct flights from Lebanon to the U.S., so often it's a very long journey with multiple stops. Now, these flights have resumed for the past few days, but it is for cases of refugees who had already packed and were waiting to go. As for those who are still in the pipeline and who are still undergoing the very stringent resettlement program, which includes heavy security and medical background checks, for those refugees, there's a big fear that they might see their files reset and their security checks and medical tests expire while we wait for the legal battle to end.
But can they not be sent elsewhere now they've been vetted for the US?
Now, the US remains one of the main countries in the world with their resettlement program. They receive thousands of refugees every year. Other countries like Germany, Canada, and Norway are in the lead when it comes to Syrian refugees. Obviously, resettling the refugees who are waiting to go to the US to other countries is a possibility, but this also means that other countries who are not as generous, like France, Belgium, the UK, need to step up and do more. We're talking about thousands of refugees, while countries neighboring Syria, like Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, are hosting currently 5 million refugees, nearly 5 million refugees. So a lot needs to be done by rich countries to welcome refugees.
And are you and the refugees themselves concerned about what kind of a welcome and support they will get, even if they do enter the United States now?
Yes, of course. I mean, those who were waiting to leave, who had already packed, left their jobs, left their houses, were very eager to go. Most of them have family already in the US and have been waiting for years, as I said, to get resettled. Now, others who are still waiting in refugee camps, who think they might have a chance, when they watch the news and they listen to what is happening in the US, have fears. They fear they might be stopped when they get to the airport. They might be not welcomed in the US. There are obviously local initiatives, churches, local councils and elected people in the US trying to help and support, but this is not enough to dispel the fears that refugees sitting in the region here have when they watch the news.
Joël Bassoul, thank you very much for having spoken to us on behalf of Oxfam. Thank you.